Politically Speaking with Jean Cubison.
I'm Nicole Gomez in for Jean Cubison. We start this week talking about security inside our nation's schools. An NBC investigation into police on campus takes a closer look at the impact they're having on students, some who are getting arrested for their behavior. Data from the U.S. Department of Education reveals that safety concerns, in part a reaction to school shootings, have led 43% of public schools to rely on security personnel, many of them police officers. The NBC News investigation found dozens of cases around the country of students facing juvenile charges for behavior that used to lead to detention or a note sent home. A middle schooler arrested for petty larceny over a carton of milk. An 8th grader handcuffed for throwing candy, a teen convicted of disorderly conduct for swearing.
If we are treating children as criminals when they're children, why are we surprised when they start behaving the way we treat them?
Truly the last thing we want to do as police officers in the school is have to handcuff kids or fight kids. Our ultimate goal is to counsel them. We are here for someone's safety.
In California, though, the data reveals a different story. We have seen harsh punishments like suspensions and expulsions decrease in our public schools. In fact, take a look at these numbers. In 2014, San Diego Unified suspended 7,580 students. The following year, 6,016. That's a 20% drop in just 1 year. Now, the reason? Some point to new legislation banning suspensions for willful defiance or mouthing off for 3rd grade and below. Also, the California Department of Education has encouraged schools to move toward restorative justice rather than suspensions. Now I want to bring in San Diego Unified Superintendent Cindy Marten and Steve Dinkin with the National Conflict Resolution Center. They've partnered up to implement restorative justice across campuses. Thank you guys so much for joining us today.
Thank you. Nice to be with you.
So Cindy, first off, I want to ask you, you were a big proponent early on of restorative justice. Can you explain what it is and why did you so strongly believe in it?
Well, look, this is really about our students and making sure that we're doing our job as a school system, which is to teach and to educate. And putting in a restorative justice approach gives us the opportunity to teach children those life lessons that they need to learn at a young age, when there's time to restore and to take responsibility. When you've caused harm, you need to own that harm. Who did you hurt? What happened? Where did that come from? And actually facing the person that you may have caused harm to. When you have those restorative conversations in small circles, one-on-one conversations with the individuals involved, you have the opportunity to teach, which is really what a school system is about. Now that doesn't mean people say, well, what about punish? If they've done something wrong, you must do something and they must pay the consequences. Of course there are consequences, but we do it in a way where we're having real dialogue with one another. And frankly, a punishment alone does not change behavior for the long term, and we're into long-term solutions for our students.
Right. Steve, why do you think that restorative justice and restorative practices works particularly well in the school settings?
Well, I agree with the superintendent that in the school there's the student, and there's also a broader community. There's school counselors, there's teachers, administrators. Everyone is really looking out for the welfare of the student. And so if we have the opportunity to bring these individuals all together with the student, all working to keep the student in the school, it's a very effective process.
Cindy, you sort of touched on it a little bit, but what do you think, or what do you say to people who believe that suspensions are necessary and a good deterrent for other kids who may see, okay, I shouldn't do this type of behavior, otherwise it might lead to me getting kicked off campus?
At the end of the day, we will never suspend or expel our way into a more just system. That we want to have opportunities to teach. We want teachers and students and victims involved in the right dialogue with one another when something happens. And certainly there's a consequence. We have suspensions and we have expulsions, and we have, the state of California has the big 5 rules of when we will expel students. Those measures are in place, but we're talking about what do you do to prevent that? And then when something does happen, how do you respond? And part of the response will be the consequence or the punishment that's necessary connected to what has happened, but that's not the only response that we make anymore. We want to be clear, we are about responsibility. We're tough on our kids. They have to take responsibility for what they've done. And frankly, suspending a student all that happens is they go home and they spend the day at home, and there might not even be a parent at home. When you stay in school and you actually face the person that you've harmed or the class that you've disrupted, and you make decisions about why did you do that, what was the result of what you did, what are you going to do next time so that doesn't happen again. We don't want to see repeat offenders. And many times with suspension, you see it again and again and again because you never got under the root of it. Why did you do that in the first place?
Well, you saw that piece earlier about police officers on campus. How do they factor into restorative practices? If you want to take that one, Steve.
Sure. The school police, they're a critical piece of the puzzle, and the idea is that if it's short of an arrest, a police officer in the school system can then direct the student to the teacher to restorative justice. If there's a situation where there actually is a requirement, where there is arrested, passes that threshold, then the school police can send the issue to the district attorney's office or the public defender to probation. And we have another program, the National Conflict Resolution Center, where we're working in partnership with law enforcement, even if there is arrest, to keep the youth out of the prison system, because we see the restorative justice process. It's really part of a large system. It's a systemic approach, and one key element is to keep youth in school. And if we can't do that, then keep them out of the prison system. Stop the pipeline to prison. Keep the kids in school and out of the system. That's how we reduce recidivism, and we keep the youth moving forward in a positive way.
Unfortunately, we're going to have to stop the conversation there, but thank you so much. Very interesting topic.